Two shooters, hidden in camouflage, were covering their teammates in the courtyard. Inside, a 10-person elite squad was on a secret mission to apprehend a ruthless arms dealer. The man in the white suit was the target the Special Forces unit was aiming for. The capture plan seemed almost complete when the unexpected struck. The desperate kingpin dragged along members of the Special Forces, activating a weapon that killed everyone instantly. Some were attacked by an unknown weapon, blood flowing from 7 orifices on their bodies, and they quickly succumbed. The 12-person squad was now cut in half. Worse still, the arms dealer's militia had stormed the gates. Could the remaining 6 members turn the tide and escape the Grim Reaper's scythe? The story began 2 days earlier in a desolate desert. Sniper Brandon Beckett met Lieutenant Colonel Modis. Beckett received an urgent alert and was brought here by a special flight. But he had no idea what the mission was or even which country he was in. Modis simply asked Beckett to follow him. At this moment, 2 more people stepped out of a car. The woman's name was Nadia, and the man was Nova. Modis briefly introduced them, and finally, Beckett learned that he was in Costa Verde. Afterward, they got into a car to return to base. Nova recounted that his uncle, Roman, had exploited the suffering and resentment of the people to seize power as prime minister, but then sold the country to the highest bidder, for example, the arms dealer Kovalov. Kovalov and the prime minister had an agreement. Kovalov would supply weapons to the prime minister's private army. In return, he would be free to manufacture and trade weapons. For that reason, Nova had joined a resistance organization called Phoenix, hoping to bring Kovalov to justice. They had located Kovalov's headquarters and placed a satellite there. Normally, Kovalov would come for inspection once a quarter to provide the latest weapons to the prime minister. But 2 nights prior, Nova had detected a thermal signature when a helicopter landed in the courtyard. Therefore, they needed to attack the enemy's base of operations. The time was set for 48 hours later. The terrain had now been reconnoitered, and all Beckett needed to do was aim and pull the trigger. Afterward, everyone went to the Phoenix headquarters in Costa Verde. There, Beckett reunited with his old friend, Agent Zero, whom Modis had introduced to him. Zero told Beckett that there was one target he had never been able to take down, Kovalov. Modis had been tracking Kovalov's bombings for years, from Africa all the way to America. Previously, there had been a global network hunting Kovalov, and he had fled to the US at that time. Zero constantly had to fill out paperwork and wait for approval from relevant agencies to operate in the US. As a result, by the time he received clearance, Kovalov had vanished without a trace. About a month ago, Nova discovered Mac, Kovalov's personal weapons designer, operating in Costa Verde. Zero told Beckett that Nova was a genius. He had traced the flow of money and found that the Prime Minister's shell company was paying Kovalov through the dark web network, and Nova continued to follow that money trail to locate Kovalov and Mac. Nova then contacted Modis, thus forming this current operation. Modis had a high reputation within the National Security Bureau, so he was free to choose his missions. This is our team, codenamed If and Noma Ipple. Whether we live or die, we must defy everything to face the enemy. Whether we live or die, the mission must be completed. The team was recruited from agencies worldwide, consisting of 10 people including Annika, Jansen, Musashi, along with Nova and Nadia, whom we just met. The remaining members would meet everyone later. Others had already heard of the reputation of Sniper Brandon Beckett. While they were talking, Modis brought a young man over. This is Zondi, our sniper here. Although he had never missed a shot in practice, due to the limited number of missions he had undertaken, Zondi was still a rookie. The number of enemies he had eliminated was 0. Time was pressing, and the mission was arduous. They stopped talking and immediately began coordinated combat training, enhancing their teamwork in a courtyard simulation model. After all, more sweat in training means less blood in battle. Modis laid out the basic battle plan. Attack at dawn when the guards were tired. There was an escape tunnel in the courtyard. Everyone would enter through the exit and then emerge from a secret trapdoor in the wine cellar. Additionally, Mac, Kovalov's chemist, was a madman, and no one knew what he would create. Therefore, they needed to bring gas masks and protective gear to guard against anthrax and nerve agents. Upon reaching the main objective, they were to collect any weapons and documents they could find, then quickly return through the tunnel to a private dock, where a fishing boat would be waiting. Although capturing Kovalov and Mac alive would be more valuable, they could be eliminated immediately if necessary. Modis divided the 10 people into 5 teams, each assigned a different task. This mission was extremely dangerous. Kovalov was protected by Prime Minister Dahl, who had a formidable militia that did his dirty work. If news of the attack leaked, many enemies would come as reinforcements. Then, Beckett began to instruct Zondi. The first time you kill someone is the hardest, because you'll always ask yourself if this person really deserves to die. But Zondi needs to remember that if he doesn't pull the trigger, that person will pull the trigger and kill him or his teammates. At the end of today's training, everyone had dinner together. During the meal, Modis enthusiastically recounted Annika's heroic deeds. Back then, when Annika was a patrol officer, she encountered a knife-wielding arsonist at a gas station. Annika, disregarding personal danger, rushed forward and wrestled with him. In the end, she endured 11 stab wounds and took down the arsonist. Modis saw this news on TV and immediately sought out Annika, recruiting her into his team. After dinner, Zero saw Annika busy with something. He asked and learned that Annika was drawing for her daughter. Zero asked her when she last saw her daughter. It's been a long time. At this moment, Nova was operating a computer. Beckett hesitated for a moment and then spoke. Surely Nova's uncle will consider this act treason if Nova continues to participate, and his life will be in danger. But Nova was incredibly resolute. I want to follow in my father's footsteps, fighting for the country and its people. At the pre-battle pep talk, Modis solemnly declared, "We must prevent Kovalov from selling any more weapons or taking the lives of any more innocent people, even if it costs us our own lives." Afterward, Beckett took Zondi outside. He wanted to see if Zondi dared to pull the trigger for the first time. Zondi told Beckett that he came from a family of freedom fighters. His grandfather was a member of the XJA Advancement Organization, but was killed in 1986. Upon reaching adulthood, his father joined the South African Army and eventually also died in battle. There is no more glorious death than to die for one's country. I also hope to die that way. As night fully descended, the two had finished setting up the sniper rifle. Beckett pointed out a target to Zondi, saying it was one of Kovalov's guards, and told Zondi to send him to meet his maker. When your superior orders you to kill, you just have to obey, no questions asked, because you trust your superior. Beckett, the old fox, had just played a painful trick on Zondi. This was just a shooting test under pressure. However, Zondi fired his first shot and passed the test. After this experience, Zondi admired Beckett even more. But he also wondered why Beckett, with both skill and prestige, didn't lead this operation himself. Beckett explained, "There's a big difference between following orders and giving orders. Following orders only risks your own life, but giving orders puts other people's lives at risk. Once the situation spirals out of control, the blood will be on your hands." Zondi listened, but only half understood. If you earn their trust and a soldier risks their life for you, that's their choice, not yours. The two returned to base to prepare for battle. Everyone was fully equipped with gear and weapons. Beckett tried to remain calm. Only when calm can a sniper hold steady and take down a target with a single shot. After packing their gear, everyone got into the vehicle and arrived at their destination at dawn. They smoothly entered the secret tunnel. Beckett, along with Zondi, in camouflage, lay in wait on the hillside, aiming sniper rifles. On the opposite rooftop were two guards. Zondi suggested dealing with the left one first as he was closest to the alarm device on the door. At this point, those in the tunnel had already taken down an enemy. They were expected to reach the junction box in another minute. Nova quickly infiltrated the surveillance system via the junction box and discovered many vehicles on camera. It seemed there were many targets in the office. As soon as they exited the tunnel, Modis ordered the two snipers to draw the target's attention and clear the way. With seasoned experience, Beckett intentionally shot the enemy in the thigh to lure the hidden guards out, then took them all down. Next, the assault team crept into the courtyard, found no enemies in the garage area, and immediately began to puncture the car tires. On the other side, Team 3 directly engaged two enemies. Annika reacted quickly, striking first and taking down both. They then slipped into the weapons depot in the courtyard and began to fortify their position there. Simultaneously, Modis led his men to eliminate an enemy in the kitchen, but one still survived behind them. They hastily pursued, unexpectedly leading everyone to Kovalov. Kovalov fiercely returned fire with a flamethrower, simultaneously sounding the alarm in the courtyard and contacting the Prime Minister to request immediate reinforcement. Kovalov then slipped out of the room through the back door and encountered Zero and two teammates. A fierce gunfight ensued. Next, Modis also arrived to assist, forming a pincer movement. At the same time, Beckett spotted the enemy sniper and observer. He quickly relayed the position and wind speed to Zondi. As the shout echoed, both simultaneously fired, taking down the enemies in the courtyard. Kovalov was still in contact with the Prime Minister. Seeing the enemy about to storm in, Kovalov desperately pulled back the covering cloth and quickly activated some device. The scientists, seeing this, rushed to adjust the trajectory, otherwise they would all be in danger. But immediately after, the Special Forces members stormed into the room. After the shockwave passed, dust filled the air, and everyone lay scattered on the ground. The two in the weapons depot also fell from the shock. The two snipers, having lost contact with everyone for a long time, decided to enter the courtyard. Kovalov had just regained his senses and stood up when a gun was pointed at his head. It was Zero. Kovalov remained defiant. 100 armed militiamen from the Prime Minister will soon arrive to reinforce him. By then, everyone here will be dead. But Modis had anticipated this. Even if the Prime Minister sends reinforcements, they will need an hour to get here. By the time the militia arrives, they will have retreated with what they came for. But suddenly, Modis' nose started bleeding. Next, other team members also began to bleed from their noses. Kovalov, after a few seconds of laughing, collapsed to the ground along with the scientist. In an instant, those who fell stopped breathing. Only a few people who were unaffected remained on the scene, alive. Zero immediately realized it was due to that strange weapon from earlier. But there was no time for them to grieve, as the militia would soon arrive. The remaining members disagreed. Annika wanted to take everyone's bodies. Zero asked again, "How can we transport bodies through the tunnel when all the vehicles outside are destroyed?" Modis' idea is clearly impractical. At this moment, Nova asked Beckett, "Do you have any ideas? How can a weapon have such a delayed effect?" That's the work of that bizarre scientist. Clearly, the new generation weapon is a technology we've never seen before. Beckett, the most clear-headed and calm, was forced to take command of the team. He arranged for everyone to carry the bodies of the fallen members into the tunnel while he went to examine the weapon. Nova was surprised to see the weapon control computer still active. This device used microwave frequencies to disrupt brain function. He remembered Modis had once mentioned a similar weapon. Kovalov had sold it to North Korea. When North Korea tested the weapon, many soldiers became ill. Nova then continued to investigate and found that Kovalov had further developed this weapon and sold it to Russia, causing dizziness, nausea, and fainting symptoms in 130 protesters. The machine before them was the latest version. Kovalov had enhanced its lethality and was even researching a silent handheld version. Now they must destroy this terrifying weapon. Beckett suggested, "First, let's get the weapon data so the whole world knows how to deal with it, in case the militia comes later and rebuilds it." But unfortunately, the relevant server was too large for them to take. They had to think of another way. Just then, Beckett remembered there was a satellite above the courtyard monitoring them. "We can upload all the data to the satellite, send it to agencies worldwide, and then destroy the server in the courtyard." But this transmission would take time, and the militia would arrive in just a moment. How can 6 people defeat 100? We will save countless lives. For me, this is a meaningful battle. Beckett didn't force them to participate in the fight. But if they agree, Beckett will show them how 6 people can become 60. Annika hesitated a little, then agreed. Because this mission was secret, there was no backup team. Beckett told Nova to contact the Phoenix Resistance Organization. This is their last resort. Hopefully, Phoenix can arrive in the courtyard before the militia. Simultaneously, they gathered all the ammunition they could find, but the quantity was not much. "Then we must make use of everything we can." Nova discovered that the militia's vehicles would arrive within half an hour. Beckett quickly positioned the team members, creating crossfire zones from every angle. But the enemy is too numerous. That alone is not enough. We need to lure them deep inside the facility and then eliminate them in waves. We must protect the laboratory where Nova is so he can safely upload the data. Then cut off power to the entire courtyard, and everyone will seize the opportunity to sneak into the tunnel to escape. After assigning tasks, Beckett separately met Nova in the laboratory, handing him a phone. The corridor is rigged with explosives, all connected to this phone. If the enemy breaks through the defense and charges in, call the first number on the list. The second number is for the bomb in the lab. Call it when they've retreated into the tunnel. The 6 people were ready for battle, quietly awaiting the arrival of the militia. Not long after, Nova announced over the radio, "The militia's vehicles are almost here." From thermal imaging, it looks like there are about 80 to 90 people. Annika, with the best eyesight, was the first to spot the vehicles. Beckett ordered everyone to prepare. Next, Annika and Jansen threw a smoke grenade, obscuring the militia's view. Beckett, gun in hand, charged into the smoke, beginning the first massacre. When the smoke cleared, Beckett quickly sought cover. The remaining members simultaneously opened fire, taking down quite a few militiamen. However, in the grand scheme of things, this was just a drop in the ocean. Hiding in the garage, Jansen took down a militiaman with a single shot, but at the same time, her position was revealed. Worse still, she was out of ammunition. Zero, from above, covered her retreat, but a few enemies still pursued. The strange thing was that the militiamen, who were fully armed a moment ago, were not carrying any guns when they pursued. It was all cold weapons. Jansen was forced into hand-to-hand combat in a water tank. She pulled out 2 axes and swung them wildly. These militiamen were just amateurs. Even ganging up, they couldn't defeat Jansen. In just a few moves, all of them fell under her axe blades. At this point, one of them finally remembered to grab a gun, but he was hit in the head by a flying axe. On the other side, the militia's heavy weapons stormed into the courtyard. The militiamen spotted Beckett's position, wanting to eliminate the most dangerous sniper first. Annika and Zero immediately covered Beckett. But soon, 2 militiamen discovered Annika's position. Annika was forced to temporarily retreat, but she was actually luring them deeper inside. Just as the soldier with the machine gun prepared to fire again, Beckett acted. But then a new wave of enemies poured in through the door. Beckett immediately ordered everyone to retreat to the second kill zone to carry out the second round of elimination. Without a gun, Annika had no choice but to engage in hand-to-hand combat. She turned around and bumped into a female militiaman. At first, Annika was at a disadvantage, almost getting stabbed through the head. She used all her strength to tilt her head and dodge, only suffering an ear injury. Angered, Annika drew her knife and rushed forward, taking down the female militiaman in just a few moves. Soon after, Zondi also arrived. At the same time, Beckett fought and retreated, finally meeting Zero. Zero shot and exploded a gas canister, blocking the enemy's path. Then the two continued to split up. On Nova's side, data upload progress had reached 91%. A female militiaman had just burst into the kitchen when Zero broke her neck. However, there were still other enemies outside, so Zero also began hand-to-hand combat. He used everything around him as a weapon, enthusiastically brawling with the militiamen. Several people fought from the kitchen door all the way down the narrow hallway. No sooner had he taken down one than another appeared. The enemies seemed endless. Seeing this, Zero broke off a table leg and used it to bludgeon the newly appeared militiaman. Suddenly, someone attacked him from behind. Zero quickly picked up a piece of scrap wood from the ground, spun around, and stabbed it forcefully into the militiaman. Finally, he picked up a gun and shot him down. Zero took a grenade from the soldier's body, pulled the pin, and then threw it towards the militiaman behind, making mincemeat elsewhere. Beckett was also fighting hand-to-hand. The top sniper also wanted to try his hand at fighting. After seizing a pistol and dealing with 2 enemies, Beckett was about to go look for the others when he was hit in the head with a rifle butt. Beckett tried to raise the barrel of his gun. The two grappled. Beckett took the opportunity to remove the gun strap and tighten it around his opponent's neck until he stopped struggling. Beckett quickly bandaged his wound and asked Nova, "How much longer?" Nova replied that the upload was at 98%, but he heard people approaching. Beckett told him to press number 1. Beckett was about to go to the lab when he was blocked by enemy fire. Zero, hearing the news, immediately came to assist. A grenade was thrown, successfully breaking the siege. Just then, Nova announced the good news. Data has been fully uploaded. He pressed the power off button. After a 10-second countdown, the entire courtyard plunged into darkness. But Jansen's side had a problem. Her night vision goggles were broken. Beckett, hearing the news, immediately went to assist her. Jansen threw a burning stick into the weapons depot, but there were already many militiamen inside. Therefore, Jansen was shot dead on the spot. Beckett put on his night vision goggles and quickly shot down the militiamen. But Jansen had not made it. Beckett informed the others. Mission accomplished. Quickly retreat into the tunnel. Beckett told Nova, "Don't go through the courtyard." But there was no response. Beckett wanted to pick up Nova, but was accidentally hit in the stomach by a bullet. He staggered a few steps, leaned against the wall, and slid to the ground. Fortunately, Zero arrived in time to save him. But Nova was not so lucky. He was hit by a volley of bullets while retreating. Teammates eliminated the enemy, rushed over, lifted him up, and took cover. Nova returned the phone to Beckett. The Phoenix Uprising is about to begin. The true reputation of the Dahl family will be remembered forever because of you. Thank you for showing the way. Under the gaze of his teammates, Nova slowly closed his eyes. Beckett heavily pressed the second number. The laboratory immediately exploded into pieces. They couldn't linger any longer. Only a dozen or so militiamen remained in the courtyard. Beckett told the others, "Quickly retreat into the tunnel. I'll stay and cover." But Zero volunteered to stay with him. So the two once again fought side by side, entrusting their lives to each other. In that critical moment, reinforcements from the Phoenix Resistance Organization finally arrived. The two were saved. They reported their teammates' positions to the Phoenix leader, asking him to retrieve the bodies. Then the two left through the main gate together. However, the members of the resistance organization surprisingly discovered that Nova still had a pulse. Elsewhere, the 4 surviving members of the team arrived at the dock. Annika still had something to do, so she planned to take the next boat. Zondi chose to stay and fight to the end. He always said, "Let him tell me what I see. I see a man I'm willing to fight with anytime, anywhere." In the end, only Beckett and Zero boarded the ship, leaving Costa Verde. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching the film. What do you think of this film? Please comment below.